from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. We want to wish all of you a very happy new year tomorrow. And we hope that you're going to have a very nice New Year's Eve, which we hopefully will be having as well. Preparations are well in hand, and fingers crossed, everything is going to go swimmingly. Now, without further ado, let me warn you. Some of this is going to be very sort of straightforward and very sort of light and airy, but some of it is going to be a little bit more profound. Aurora is snuggling up to me. I'm not quite sure what she's doing. And darling, you're going to alter everything adversely. I think Aurora wants to wish you all a very happy new year a second time. And so the first two subjects that I'm going to cover are going to be unsexy, let's put it that way. And then I'll plunge in with the royal stuff. Okay, so just forewarned is forearmed. So if anybody wants to avoid the heavier stuff, it's the first two questions. Sorry. I would also like to thank everybody who sent in Christmas cards and some of you who sent in Christmas presents. I doubt very much that I am actually going to be able to get it together in the very near future to organize for thank you notes or to be written. So I'm sorry, it's hopefully going to happen sooner rather than later. But if it doesn't, it's because I cannot tell you how snowed under I am. My life is spent with either meeting obligations or sleeping to gather up the strength to meet obligations. I'm not complaining because I love my obligations. As I said to my brother when I got Tum Tum, who was my first dog, and he said, "What do you want a dog for?" That's so much work and trouble and all that responsibility. And I've never forgotten what I said to him. I said, "Mickey, responsibility is spiritual wealth." So I'm not complaining, I am explaining. Okay, so now to plunge in with what Dorothy Grace has to say. Dear Lady C, would you therefore say that reform is liberal conservative? Thank you. This can be confusing. I have been conservative a long time and wish for a second Margaret Thatcher. Not only you. Although it has to be said, a lot of us didn't appreciate what we had in Mrs. Thatcher until we lost her. Me included. Yes, reform is, if it is true to what it says it's going to do, it will be a liberal conservative party with liberal conservative policies. Unlike the Conservatives and Labour, it actually has more respect for civil liberties, for freedom of speech, for freedom of congregation than either of those two parties. And we can't even say the two main parties because now Reform has more registered members than the Conservatives. So it is now the second party in the country in terms of members of the party. Mrs. Thatcher did make one or two mistakes. I mean, Mrs. Thatcher was actually hemmed in by enemies and hemmed in with enemies. She had the old patrician lot who were exemplified by Harold Macmillan, who said, she's selling the family silver. So you had that lot which thought, she's just a grocer's daughter. Then you had the wet Conservatives who thought, she's being far too harsh. Then you had the mandarins, the civil servants, who have been a law unto themselves for most of the last century, certainly the last half of the century, previous century, and have remained in the first quarter of this century a law unto themselves. She should have broken their backs, figuratively speaking, and didn't. But then she was surrounded by so much opposition, not only from the official opposition party, but her own party, that she didn't have either the will or the energy. So that's a mistake she made. Well, Kemi Badenoch, who's the present Labour leader, this present Conservative leader, slip of the tongue, because she's actually more right-wing than many of the other Conservatives, but she's still very left, and she's also very soft on reality. And she has just made the biggest solecism that it is possible to make. And to those of you who have seen me on Twitter, I have tweeted twice about this. She accused Nigel Farage of faking the figures. He demanded that she apologize, and he says he's going to be doing something. Of course, this is not a period for coming to firm decisions because everybody's on holiday, including lawyers. So even if you've spoken to your lawyer, the odds are you're not going to be implementing anything. But he's giving her enough rope with which to hang herself, because at the time of me saying this, she still hasn't apologized. Not only has she not apologized, it emerges that she actually had the resourcefulness to complain to Ofcom, which is the regulatory body for the broadcasting industry in this country, to complain to Ofcom that Nigel Farage, being a columnist, so to speak, I suppose you call him a presenter at GB News, he had an unfair advantage over her, and they were bashing her. Poor baby, she'd been bashed. Oh, where have we heard that one before? Oh, bashed. Oh. And she wanted more airtime. And Angelos, who is the head of GB News, went into her office and they had a very civilized conversation. But so she's been very resourceful about eking out more of a platform for herself, while viciously, unfairly, and untruthfully lying and trying to disparage, denigrate, and defame Nigel Farage and the Reform Party's accomplishments. It also emerges that not only did she overtly accuse him of fraud, but she lied while doing so. Now, this is truly unbelievable, because she asserted that we've been watching the back end for days, she said, and she is something of an expert on technology. Some years ago, by her own admission, she even hacked into the Labour MP Harriet Harman's account and altered things to plant comments that she wanted Harriet Harman to make. She apologized for it, but it shows she has a level of awareness of how technology works, that she not only the knowledge of how technology works, but of technology itself. Because she says, we have been watching the back end for days. Well, and the back end refers to certain things that would, if you see the post, you know what I mean. But in fact, what she was referring to was the front end. She had no access to the back end any more than anybody else, but she had access to the front end. And she will have known, since she is so expert on technology, she will have known that what she was saying was a lie. And she said it. And she hasn't apologized yet. She hasn't made any amends yet. On the contrary, she has come out with fists flying. Oh dear, oh dear. How does that one work? Well, I see Kemi Badenoch's problem, because Kemi Badenoch is heading up the 21st century of the 20th century Liberal Party, a formerly great party that has peaked and is about to waft off into insignificance. And there is every danger that that will happen with the Conservatives. Let's see if it's under her watch or someone else's. Name withheld says, Lady C, what do you make of J.K. Rowling saying there's no such thing as trans kids? I am the mother of an adult post-operative transsexual, and my experience tells me she's wrong. Oh dear, oh dear. I suppose I am obliged to answer, and I can well see why you've asked the question. I think my own personal experience of having been brought up incorrectly is that perception of gender is innate, and that you are born with it's an identity. I think it is one of the cornerstones of identity, and you can be born with a birth defect and a deformity, a handicap, however you want to put it, as indeed I was. And that doesn't alter the fact that you know what you are. Now, of course, my situation is not the same as your child's situation, because I'm not, you don't say whether it's one sex or the other, so I'm just going to presume it doesn't matter. I would have thought a far more appropriate person whose experience we should be relying upon than J.K. Rowling, who I think has actually gone a little bit too far this time, and I admire her, and I respect some of what she's doing. I agree with some of what she's doing. And I've made my position clear elsewhere that I agree with that nobody should be tampering with the identity of prepubescent children. However, Caitlyn Jenner is a living example of the fact that a trans kid becomes a trans adult. Now, Caitlyn Jenner, as Bruce Jenner, was the archetype of masculinity. He was a beautiful man, a top athlete, father of several children, but in his winter years, he decided to convert, shall we say, or this is YouTube, I need to be careful how I put things. Transit from one identity to another to accord with what he thought was his more sincere identity. Now, where this becomes relevant is, and I agree with J.K. Rowling, that we should not be tampering with children. I do not agree with her, however, that there is no such thing as trans kids. Trans adults were trans kids. And you only need to do your research. And I'm amazed that she hasn't done her research. Or is she so deeply entrenched in her campaign that she is not prepared to have her opinions trimmed, not changed, trimmed, because much of what she says is sensible, but she's gone too far and she is chatting rubbish. As Professor Robert Sapolsky of Stanford University makes very clear in a lecture that a member of the public has brought to my attention, and I looked at only 6 minutes and 41 seconds of it, but it was enough to get the point across, which is that the brains of post-operative transsexuals, there's some part of the brain, I'm very unbiological, which always accords not with their identity at birth, let's put it that way, but with their post-operative identity. There is evidently such a thing There are differences between the male brain and the female brain. And say a post-operative male to female will always have a female, the parts of the brain that are specific to perceived identity, and they will always be that. He also made the point that there have been cases where men have lost their manhood, say through cancer or whatever. And there is a phenomenon which, for instance, it's quite common with, if say you've had your leg amputated and you still have feeling and pain in your leg because you are missing something that is natural to you. That phenomenon never takes place in male to female post-operative transsexuals, because the brain has been telling them all along, and ultimately we are more our brain than anything else, that notwithstanding all of the other biological evidence to the contrary, insofar as the brain is concerned, they are the opposite of what is apparent at birth. Caitlyn Jenner is the perfect example of this. And so, thanks for the question. I'm not so sure I should be thanking you for dragging me into such a controversial subject. But I do think that, to an extent, it is my duty in this instance to comment, because I have said for some time now that insofar as my knowledge of the subject is concerned, and it's pretty sketchy, I have to tell you, I'm no expert on any of these conditions. Quite frankly, having been subjected to the upbringing that I had, I have been as happy as possible to put it behind me. It's rather like asking somebody who managed to escape from the gas chambers to be using scent that is evocative of Zyklon B gas. No, thank you very much. So it's a subject that, by and large, I have as little to do with as possible, because it brings back too many painful memories. However, I think J.K. Rowling is wrong, and she is extremely popular, and I respect her campaign insofar as protecting children are concerned, but I think she has made a huge mistake in this instance, because she is conflating transvestism with transsexuality. And the two things are evidently totally unrelated, which unfortunately in the trans debate has conflated them. So I'm not blaming her for this, but I'm just stating that this is what happens when a cause gets hijacked, as indeed the trans cause has been hijacked, and the distinctions that absolutely exist are eroded to the detriment of all. So I hope that answers the question, and now we'll go on to something a little bit, hopefully, less weighty. Maria Althorpe says, or Althorpe, I don't know if you pronounce your name, Althorpe or Althorpe, so I'll do it either way. I just heard that arrogant Harry and the missus, Maria Althorpe, you have have to be racist, and you have to be classist, and you have to be sexist, and you have to be anti-royalist. How can you call the Duchess Mrs.? One tear left out. I cry on her behalf. Are aiming to revamp their image in the States. Again, they'll never accept the fact that the damage they've done is irreversible. Their level of disconnect is breathtaking. And then it says, you don't, and I don't know if the rest of the question got lopped off or not. I'm sorry. So we'll just go with that bit of it. I've been hearing very interesting things about that state and poor H&M and grief-stricken on their behalf. But I gather that when they're not at each other's throats, they're trying to be presenting a unified facade so that, because poor darlings, they are fully aware of the fact that they are in a last chance saloon. I am told by connections in Hollywood that American Riviera Orchard is an embarrassment. And they being Netflix, are actually trying to find a way of retrieving the situation to the extent that it does not impact adversely upon Ted Sarandis's career. No, that's pretty heavy duty, no? They have exposed themselves as being undesirable, unlikable, boring, of no interest, save as a morality tale being played out on the world stage. And that's their real interest. They are a morality tale. And everybody is waiting now, no longer impatiently, rather tired of the whole thing, for the denouement. The denouement will ultimately be a left field activity. Let's wait and see what happens. But they have shown themselves to be of no interest whatsoever. They're dull, they're boring, they're unlikable, they're arrogant. Nobody likes them. Nobody on either side of the Atlantic likes them anymore, with the exception of their ever-decreasing band of Sussex Squad SS supporters, who you notice are nowhere near as active as they used to be. Could that be, I ask you, could that be? Aurora, Mickey, come and tell Motty if you think this is right. And do you think it's right, because the girls aren't coming, that it could be that everybody's seen through them? I think that's it, don't you? Foggy Morning says, greetings from Alabama and hello to you. To you too. Greetings from Castle Goring. I saw you on Dan Wooten's show and I wanted to ask your opinion on what you said regarding Harry's children. You believe they are being raised with a question of legitimacy. I agree, but cannot understand why Harry would let his kids live with that doubt when he himself has been the target of the same thing, that he isn't Charles's son. And may I interject at this stage and say, and complained about it. Is he so demented that he can't see he's putting his own children through the same thing? Actually, there's another reason why he could be silent on the subject. There's another very good reason why he would be silent on the subject. And the reason is that any explanation, any disclaimer would open him up to interrogation, and not only necessarily by the public. Charles and Diana obviously ignored the whole business because there were people who could incontrovertibly prove, one of whom was me, that James Hewitt and Diana's affair began after they met at Hazel West's party after Harry was born. That's where they really connected, at Hazel West's party. They didn't have to prove anything, nor did they have to disprove anything, because Diana had been delivered of that child in St. Mary's, Paddington, surrounded by doctors, and both she and Charles were content that he was the inseminator. Let's put it in a purely biological context. There also was the matter of the dignity of the crown and their personal dignity, and the fact that the public don't have a right to know everything. All of these were factors that kicked in. Also, they knew that Harry was their son. The situation is entirely different with Harry's children. No announcement was signed off by any of the doctors. Buckingham Palace itself was led to make an untrue announcement about the birth of the child being Archie. They had nothing to do with Lilibet's birth, but with Archie's. They were misled by Harry and Meghan and or their representatives. So they announced that she was in labour after the baby had been safely delivered. Did you hear the doorbell ring? I wonder if I have a FedEx delivery coming. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'll continue. I'm sure I can pick it up later. I'm sure they leave it in a safe space. Harry clearly has a choice in this matter. He could easily clear up the mystery. He could easily provide scans that identify that each of those children was born by a Meghan. They provided a scan in the Netflix documentary with all of the identifying features removed. That's not proof. Proof is a scan that has the name of the mother, the date, doctor, everything. All the standard identifying features of a scan. They should provide scans of both. They should provide irrefutable evidence from the attending physicians and obstetricians and surgeons, if there was a surgeon, to attest to that those children were born of Meghan's body. And also, since they have created such a mystery, the proof that the eggs came from her. That's very easy to prove. It's very easy to deliver these goods, and if they have possession of them. Now, I am actually going along with some of what they did in the Netflix show, because they're the ones who provided the scan. Nobody asked them to provide it. They provided it to quieten all the questions that her extraordinary performance and display during the pregnancy and the gestational period that Archie was around. She's the bump being 8 months at 2 months, 16 months at 9 months, like she's an elephant, etc. Just bizarre, just bizarre. They have provided so far of their own initiative what they thought was evidence that would shut everybody up. But in fact, as with everything that they've done, it simply begs more questions. But since they have tried to do it and failed to convince anybody, they could very easily, if they have all the material available, they could very easily provide it. There would go all the questions. In terms of the entitlement of those children to the rights and privileges of a legitimate prince and princess, of course, it would open up another can of worms, which would be, well, if she bore those children, why was the belly swinging to the left? Why was it swinging to the right? Why was it distended 6 inches beyond her bosom, and then the same day, flush with the bosom, and sometimes even the bosom, those 2 fried eggs on a pavement, sometimes even competing with the fried eggs for altitude, shall we say. I think I've made the point. Family Anderson says, Lady C, good day to you from the US. Good day to you. I'm so happy I discovered you a few years ago and then joined your channel. Thank you very much. I'm very glad you did too. You provided a bright spot in my life at a dismal time and continue to do so. Thank you so much. I'm so thankful to you. My question, do you think that Prince William flies together with his family as a way to pressure action to remove Harry and his children from the line of succession? Thank you again. Very interesting question. I have to say that is not a possibility that had crossed my tiny mind. I don't know that Prince William thinks in quite those terms. Oh, I think that would be a very covert way of applying pressure, and it clearly doesn't work. No, sorry, I would have thought Prince William flies together with his family because he is an accomplished and confident pilot, and he thinks nothing can or will happen and is prepared to take the chance. I think he loves his family, and I suspect if he had to change the way he functions, it would not only would he be relegating control to elsewhere, which he doesn't want to do, but it would be introducing a doubt where so far no doubt exists in his mind. The fact that the doubt is an actual reality is beside the point. And he is his parents' son, and both his father and his mother had, and his mother had, and his father has, a streak of tremendous obstinacy. So I think there's that element to it. He thinks, I am told, it's much ado about nothing, and he fails to see why he should go along with it. And that's it. It's his choice. Of course, if anything should happen, it would be, I suppose, in some ways cleaner if everybody went to heaven together. Let's put it that way. I can understand somebody feeling like that, but I don't think the thought even occurs to him. As far as my understanding is, he just thinks it's ludicrous, it can't happen, it won't happen, but of course it could happen. So I leave it at that. Canarican says, those amaryllis flowers in the floral arrangement behind Lady C are gorgeous, almost as stunning as Lady C is. Thank you. Lady C, why isn't the king doing anything to stop William from flying with his family? I realize Prince William is a grown man and can make his own decisions, but I think his situation is unique and calls for a little more caution and security. It is almost like Meghan and Harry are counting on something tragic happening to the Wales family. H and M are despicable in my opinion. Today might be my lucky day. Today might be my lucky day. Oh, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. The Queen tried to stop him and didn't succeed. I'm pretty sure the King will have said something to him, falling on deaf ears. He's very self-willed, he's very strong-willed. He has the confidence of being the next king. So, nobody can stop him. We are seeing the more acceptable face of the obstinacy that both brothers have. Harry's obstinacy is the less acceptable face of that character trait. William's is the more acceptable face. But make no mistake about it, both those brothers can be extraordinarily obstinate. Shall we leave it at that? Anna Key says, people like Mary, who are fans of the Sussex royals, love it, Sussex royals. Some of you are so funny. Need to remember that Has and Meg wanted to be half in. They wouldn't have wanted that if they had believed their own smear campaign. Anarchy, I love you. We could dedicate a whole episode to this. This is one of the most profound comments that anyone could make, and I back you up 100%. I hope that I have made the point over the years. That I have not made it as succinctly as you have made it, and I congratulate you on that. Harry and Meghan's desire to be half in and half out has been all the refutation that anybody ever needed as to the reality of all their complaints about being disadvantaged, shoved out, trivialized, demonized, victimized, all utter rubbish. Their loathing of the establishment and the institution and the way it is run. Are we to believe that they were such masochists that they were going to voluntarily, half the time, subject themselves to the torture that they would now like us to believe being a member of the royal family was? Thank you so much. And I would encourage anybody to ask questions on this matter and for us to expand upon it, because I think this hits the nail very firmly on the head. Tanya Fabregas says, saw your interview with Dan Wooten, Lady C. I've often thought that had Mr. Markle been a billionaire, then she would still be in his life until the bitter end. But because he bankrupted himself so she could have everything and was broke, she was embarrassed. I also agree with what you said that she has psychopathy as part of her makeup. I joined Reform last month. I'm hoping they will be our next government. So am I, as long as they remain true to liberal conservative ideals. And you're absolutely right about the reason why Meghan jettisoned her father. She jettisoned him clearly because he was going to be of no further use to her. And he was dangerous to be around. Now, had he been a multimillionaire or a billionaire, she wouldn't have been able to have come up with the narrative that she came up with, that won Harry's respect and regard. Oh, I've got such initiative and I'm so industrious. I was working at a soda fountain when I was 6 weeks old. And I was also piling shelves before I could walk. Well, she wouldn't have been able to come up with that scenario. So she'd have come up with something else, but maybe she'd have said, oh, my father's mean or whatever. But she'd have made sure that she was there for the payout, in my opinion. And yes, I couldn't agree with you more. I think she'd have found a way to spin things. Because you see, she actually went along with a fiction that she wanted her father to give her away. She never sent him an invitation. She clearly had every idea of preventing him from coming and made sure she pressed all his buttons so that the machine would actually just go psh, which he did. The machine being Thomas Markle, because, if you slam a machine's buttons enough, it might just give up, and he did. So she treated him as if he were a machine. But I agree, had he been not a millionaire, he'd have had to have been a multimillionaire or a billionaire. My goodness, she would have been all over him like a rash, the way she used to be when she needed him. Let me plug into the national grid. Oh, sorry, to Daddy and his bank account. And let me just make sure that I get everything I want. And we are going to end with what Leaney says. This is really rather sweet, I have to tell you. To those of you who don't know, I was the patron of ManyTears, which is a wonderful dog rescue charity. And then Sylvia Van Atter, who runs it and is very, very committed. I mean, she's almost fanatical, and I say that with admiration. She discovered that Mickey was pregnant, and she dumped me as patron because I was breeding instead of rescuing. The fact that I did not qualify for a dog on various grounds didn't enter into the picture where she was concerned. She was just absolutely furious with me that I would dare to breed when there are rescues that I could not have had. But anyway, irrational, but very admirable. And so now here we go. Lady C, what do you think of the incredible amount of money Joanne Page won on Wheel of Fortune and donated to ManyTears? I believe it was £34,950. I'm so pleased. That will help so much. Also, did you see the little border collie that has gone there? He came from a farm as he is afraid of sheep. Isn't that sweet? Happy New Year to you, your family, and little furry friends. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. I do not have the time to look at television. I did not see it. I am delighted that Joanne Page nominated ManyTears as the charity that would benefit from her victory, and I am delighted that they won. And if anybody wants to donate to ManyTears, please feel free to do so. Just because Sylvia Van Atter jettisoned me doesn't mean I don't support the charity, nor do I wish them well. And I also think that it's a wonderful charity and that she does sterling work. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed this. Please have a very, very happy new year, and may 2025 bring you as much joy, happiness, fulfillment, and all good things as one can hope for. Thank you so much. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and happy 2025 again. Bye.